This is John Cola with OKRaw.com. Today I have another exciting episode for you. This one's very important to me because I see it happen a lot in the raw foods arena. Recently I was at the Woodstock Fruit Festival and met a brilliant young lady named Jolita Brilliance. And Jolita Brilliance has recently started eating meat. And it may happen to a lot of people that are into a fruit-based diet. And I don't want that to happen to you. So today I have a special guest, Dr. James Sheridan, who has a lot of experience with this exact situation and has some reasons why this occurs. And in this video, we're going to share those reasons with you because I do not want you going back to eating animal products. In my opinion, it's not a solution and it's going to cause a bigger problem. So James, why don't you tell us more about yourself, how long you've been into a plant-based, raw style diet and some of your experiences with the fruits and eating high fruit diet.
I've been into plant-based veganism for about 28 years and raw foods for about 26. Not as a passing fancy, but of a full-time career, vocation, and a full-time dharma. I'm into it. I live it, I breathe it, I research it. I've been through most of the raw food diets and I've helped evolve some of them. I'm not the founder of a raw foods movement, but I'm one of the early pioneers. And the number one reason that I see people leaving a raw foods vegan program is because they emphasize fruitarianism. The number one reason we lose more people to veganism because of fruitarianism than anything else. In fact, raw fruit fruitarianism is the worst threat to veganism. Why? You think you go out in nature in the Garden of Eden, you walk around, you sit under a tree, you you do something, you pick this perfectly ripe fruit when it comes off and you eat it. And it is this beautiful lore and romantic poetry that has some validity to it. Fruits are unbelievably high in phytonutrients, high in antioxidants, high in certain minerals, other components that help you heal. They provide immediate energy. They're phenomenal for you. There's no toxins in the fruits whatsoever. Some vegetables and other foods have small amounts of toxins. Fruits have none. They're like God's gift to man and woman. They're amazing for you. But can man or woman live on fruit alone? That is the question. That's been the question for decades.
Wow.
Now, in my experience, the vast majority, I mean like 90% of people who are long-term fruitarians, I've never seen them be successful, ever. And I've been in this raw now for at least 26 years, studying and researching and being with these people and studying them. They either lose their teeth and lose their strength and health, and they just go off into the jungle and die and sit in a hammock and don't do anything, or they go to the other end of the spectrum and they start eating meat because the fruitarian paradigm, or largely fruitarian paradigm, doesn't have to be all fruit.
I mean,
doesn't work for them.
Is fruit bad, James? Should I stop eating fruit because I mean it's good? I'm gonna start eating meat. I mean, what's up?
No.
Why don't we define how much fruit? Like, if somebody's eating like 80% of calories from fruit or 90%, like a really extreme amount that's not normal because there's so many different other foods on earth we could be eating.
Correct. Okay, if you're doing a tremendous amount of athletic activity, you're burning glucose in your bloodstream. You're burning glycogen that your liver's converting into glucose. You're burning glycogen from your muscles. It's going into your bloodstream. And you're deficient in glycogen because you worked out really hard for really long. What your body wants, the first thing it wants immediately from that expenditure is it wants sugar. It wants immediate blood sugar because it's trying to crank out blood sugar as fast as it can because you're using it constantly. So after you work out or doing lots of athletics, you want fruits or fruits blended into a smoothie, which is even more concentrated. It dictates that. It mandates that. But if you're not doing all that exercise, you don't need that much sugar coming into your body constantly. And even if you're doing that much exercise, there's still people that have failed on that and then thrown the baby out with the bathwater and said, fruit is toxic for me. Fruit's crap for you. Even in the raw foods movement, there's people that know because too much fruit, 70, 80, 90%, even 50 for some people is too much for sure.
And it depends on the person, right?
Correct.
Everybody's a little bit different because we're not all clones out of the factory.
Whether the vata, pitta, kapha, their metabolism, how much are they doing, their time in life, what's their physical spending makes a big difference on how much fruit and the time of year too. But because too much fruit is bad for people, most people, therefore fruit's bad for everybody. It's throwing the baby out of the bathwater the other direction, and now we're having these ultra-high fat diets, ultra-high fat raw food diets that still clean quality fats, totally different than an animal product, of which people have overcome diabetes on actually. Even though it's ultra-high fat, it can be better. At least you're overcoming diabetes, the problem that the fruit can sometimes cause. But it's the opposite direction.
So do you recommend I eat a higher fat diet then, James, if I'm not supposed to eat fruit? I mean, what am I going to do?
I recommend you eat a balanced amount of fruit and a balanced amount of fat, and that's going to be varied depending on who you are and how much exercise you're doing. And we'll talk about fat, when we get down to fat, you can absolutely do too much fat.
Okay.
And you can do too little too. I want to talk about that. So most people on fruitarian diets, in my experience, are deficient in multiple things. And sugar. If you have just dessert, sweet, dessert, what do you crave? You crave savory, salty foods, things with garlic and salt and spices and stuff. And if you just eat salt, what do you want after a mega salty meal? You want dessert. Bam, 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 bam. Just go back and forth. Swing that pendulum like a maniac back and forth and never have any balance. And that's what happens with fruitarian diets. People swing the pendulum all over everything else because grains are poison, they all cause grain damage, they all have opiates, which is not true. Because gluten is bad for some people. Therefore, all grains have gluten, which is also not true. All tubers are allegedly bad for you. Any cooked foods, all the legumes are garbage for you. Blah, 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 blah. So in a fruitarian paradigm, what are your options? A little tiny bit of greens that they let you have. Or screw it. And if you're not doing well, just shove more food down your throat.
Wait.
And you'll heal.
Yeah, right? Aren't you supposed to eat more fruit if you're not getting the results on a fruitarian diet? You just need to eat more. You're not eating enough,
Have
right?
more sugar come in your body. More sugar come by your teeth. Someone who's on a fruitarian diet has more sugar pass by their teeth than any junk fooder in the history of the world. Because when you eat mostly fruit, every single meal is sugar coming on your teeth. And if you put white sugar in with bacteria, the bacteria that cause dental decay, those bacteria grow. They grow like crazy. If you put dental bacteria in with fruit, the dental bacteria grow way better on fruit and fruit sugar than they do on white sugar because fruit sugar is way more vital. Fruit, it blows away white sugar. It's totally better for you. So when you have fruit sugar hitting your teeth all day long, the bacteria in your teeth are in love. They grow like crazy. And dental issues is rampant in people that eat high amounts of fruit, including me in the past when I was largely fruitarian, started rotting the teeth out of my mouth.
I had issues with my teeth as well due to too much fruit.
And that is the number one people because they have no options. They say, oh, well, I can't eat anything in the whole food vegan cooked kingdom. Everything that's cooked is poison, which is not true. Leukocytosis only occurs with animal protein, not with any cooked vegan food. They go the opposite, complete opposite direction. We're eating a high sugar, low salt, low protein, low iron, low B12 food and eat mostly fruitarian. What does the body think and what is it used to? That is a lot of salt because you're not allowed to add separate salt in a fruitarian diet. Blood is salty. Meat does have iron in it, it has B12 in it, it has protein in it, and it also has a tremendous amount of toxicity in it, but it's the exact opposite of a fruitarian diet. I see some people go to eat high meat diets, and then they feel like crap after a while, and they say, I gotta be a fruitarian, I gotta cleanse this crap out. Back to fruitarian, feel good for a while, then become deficient, go back to meat, fruit. They just destroy the body. Too high sugar can give you osteoporosis, and animal protein gives you osteoporosis too. These people erode their bones away, and they erode their life away and their hormones away.
Wow, so it sounds like these diet extremes are really not good for us. So, Jamin, there must be a center ground that we'll talk about in a minute. But what are the other top reasons why people start eating, meat from raw vegan or? And
yes. It doesn't even have to be fruitarian. Sometimes it's radical deficient diets. Sometimes it's all raw diets that have certain things that are just so stringent. Sometimes they're too high in fat. Sometimes there's no salt. There's all these different things that oftentimes a raw food diet, 100% raw, does not work, in my experience, optimally for most people long term. And because you're programmed with raw, that raw is the main number one criteria. It's the only criteria of a raw food diet that works. If it doesn't work, well, you can't have everything cooked. You might as well just go all the way to the other end and eat meat. It's a total rejection of an all raw vegan paradigm because if one little thing doesn't work and they don't give you a place to go, the leaders don't give you a place to go within that, then you go to eating meat. So some people think that eating meat is better for you than eating tempeh or eating steamed legumes or steamed cauliflower or brown rice or potatoes, foods that have been shown to reverse heart disease. Foods that have been shown to prevent, in many cases, reverse cancers and diabetes and so forth. You can't do that on poison. It's a total misconception that all cooked foods are poison, and that sends people to eating meat. Case in point, famous vegan-oriented health professional, MD, at a conference many years ago. Woman comes up, she says, you know what, when I eat your high starch, no salt, ultra low fat diet, I don't feel well and I have to have turkey and fish occasionally because it makes me feel better. It really blah, blah, blah. She was genuine. The doctor told her, well, it doesn't work for everybody. I'm like, You didn't listen to the woman. You didn't get out of your own box to understand. So I went to the woman and I followed up with her. I said, look, I think you can do it all vegan and be much healthier. She goes, really? Blah, blah, blah. We talked about it. So here's what I had her do. I had her soak and slightly sprout lentils, is what she mostly did this with. High protein lentils. The meat was high protein. Everything she was eating, she was told, do not eat protein, because animal protein is so toxic, because animal protein causes leukocytosis. The same thing happens when you get an organ transplant. It rejects the meat, because animal protein, we know, promotes cancer. Therefore, this author assumed that all protein promotes cancers, including vegetable proteins, which is not true. Vegetable proteins do not promote cancer. So this author was having them do so low protein, and the only thing they could do, they weren't allowed to have legumes. They weren't allowed to have spirulina, not chlorella, no herbs, no superfoods, nothing like that, nothing high in protein at all. She said, well, screw this, nothing high in protein in vegetable, I'll just eat meat occasionally. That's one driving factor. The other driving factor is she was craving salt. She was told, don't have salt. Salt raises your blood pressure. Therefore, if your blood pressure is higher, you're going to have more cholesterol and heart disease and so forth, which is not a direct correlation. And also, she was probably craving essential fatty acids, which she wasn't allowed to eat any fat. No oil, no flax seeds, no nuts, no seeds, nothing with any fat in it other than tiny amounts occurring in grains and fruits and vegetables. That's it. So here's my recipe for her. Lentils, higher in protein than animal products, non-toxic, full of phytonutrients. Protein's covered. Massive amount of nutrients in there. Flaxseed oil, omega-3s in a healthy form that does not have any toxicity like pre-formed EPA from animal products does.
But shouldn't we eat like the ground flax, Jameith, instead of like the flax oil?
Ultimately, ground flax is even healthier than the flax oil because it's a whole food with the beneficial phytoestrogens that compete with the xenoestrogens and the estrogens in the own body that protect you from them. Yes, that's better. But you can't put it on lentils. Doesn't work. She wanted something that tasted good and that worked. Lentils, steamed. You gotta cook lentils, or you gotta cook all the legumes. Flax oil, essential fatty acids, also more calorically dense than just the whole grain she was eating, and she wanted more calories. Celtic sea salt, but she could have used any salt. She could have used gluten-free organic tamari, or she could use miso, she could use the Himalayan salt, something like that. Those three things, cooked legumes, in this case lentils, flax oil, and sea salt, completely eliminated forever her craving for animal products. She's been vegan, this was probably 16, 17 years ago.
Wow.
She has not eaten because the person was not giving her the option. But I gave her the option. Look, you can do this vegan. I have helped thousands of people stay vegan or return to veganism, but they had to break out of their previous rigid paradigm, whether it's a raw food paradigm, which is what mostly happens, or if it's an ultra low fat, ultra low protein, ultra low sodium diet.
Wow. I'm in favor of, just eating a balanced diet, whatever it is. I mean, we don't want to get too extreme in any case, and this sounds like a happy medium.
Yes, and it's not a compromise. It's a synergize. It's the best way to do. What was better for her? Eating lentils that are phenomenal for you with flax oil and Celtic sea salt, which taste and feel good and digest phenomenally, or eating a piece of flesh? The lentils is the best for her. It was the best thing she could possibly do. And there's a lot of people on carbotarian type diets. Some people can do just whole grain starches, potatoes, squashes, grains, and thrive. But there's a good section of the population that they do not get enough protein. They don't get enough fat or enough fatty acids in there. They don't get enough nutrients from that, and they need to do things like the legume family, like focus it more on actual vegetables and massive big salads with things like avocados in it. Not 10 avocados at once, that's ridiculous. But because animal products, animal fat, and processed vegetable oils are so bad for you, therefore, avocado is bad for you? Is it the same exact fat? Absolutely not. Avocados are a superfood. They're super high in folic acid. The fat's really easy to digest and process. Yes, you can have too much of them, but you have to have way more avocados to hurt yourself with having too much fat than you do regular fat. So half an avocado in a salad, or even an avocado if you have burning a lot of calories, is absolutely not too much. But on those other rigid programs, you're not allowed to do that. With radical fruitarian programs, you can't have half an avocado, let alone a whole avocado. With these ultra-low-fat, starchitarian type things, you can't have avocado, you can't have salt, you can't have protein things. They take too much away from you.
So, Jameith, you're saying I can eat all the salt I want now and
no
nuts?
Thank you, Russ.
What's up, man?
No, I'm not saying that.
He's saying, you can eat salt now, right? So what's the adequate amount of salt we should all be eating?
Hard question to answer, but you don't want to shake salt on your food because it's too much, then you're thirsty, then you crave sugar. If you crave sugar after your salty meal, you had too much.
And what if you crave salt after your sugary meal?
You've had too much sugar. If it's a mild craving, like, oh, now I've had this enough of this food. If it's strong, it's too much. If you get thirsty after a salty meal, you've had too much.
Wow, it's all about balance. I mean, if I eat too much salt, I'll get itchy. And that's like my body telling me, hey, John, you had too much salt, dude. Don't eat so much.
If I have too much salt, I'll get really thirsty. And because salt can taste good and sometimes it's fun to put stuff on, it can be something that can be overdone. But here's what happens if you have not enough salt. And I have a visceral experience of this in my own life. I've been vegan now for about 27, 28 years. I can lose count. It's a long, long time. I'm still buff and strong. About 18 years into vegan, I started craving blood, actual blood. I craved the steak juice that I had when I was a kid. It was about a 2-month period of time. I was doing massive quantities of water. Probably about 2 gallons of actual water plus a bunch of juices every day. Just massive quantities. I was doing 0 sodium, not even lots of celery. And I was doing herbs to actually flush my kidneys, to let water get out of my system. So I was on a massive salt deficient diet. The most salt deficient I've ever been in my entire life. I've told people about being salt deficient, about being sodium deficient, about not having enough sodium in your tissues. Then you actually are dehydrated. If you have too much salt, you have too much water in your tissues. If you have not enough salt, you can't hold enough water in suspension in your tissues. And no matter how much water you drink, you're dehydrated. The more you drink, the more dehydrated you get. You have to have enough salt in there. So I started craving blood. And I didn't tell my wife, I didn't tell me. I was shocked. I'm like, my God, I'm 18 years vegan. I strongly, viscerally craved that steak juice, blood. So one day, after about 2 months, I was in front of my fridge. I grabbed the gluten-free organic tamari, which is very salty, and usually put it as a seasoning on your food, and I drank it like a juice. I drank it, and I felt this electricity go all over my body because when I looked at that tamari, before I drank it, I started to salivate. My body was telling me, you idiot, you need more salt, you idiot. Don't drink more fluids. Don't have more gallons of water. Don't have more herbs that are flushing your kidneys for this long period of time. I then scooped the miso in my mouth like it was a cake or frosting or something like that and just ate it directly like a food.
Wow.
A lot of salt coming to my system, and I felt additional electricity and energy just come over my entire body because I was so salt deficient. My body was telling me, you idiot, just eat that salt. You are making us so salt deficient. And when I wouldn't eat any salt, no Celtic sea salt, no Himalayan salt, no tamari, no miso for these 2 months, when I had the massive amount of water which flushed more salt out of my system, when I had all these herbs that were cleansing me but too much for too long, I set up a situation where I craved salt and I was grossly deficient in it. And since I wouldn't eat those other things, my body was like, okay, fine. If you're not going to eat the normal healthy things of salt, we're going to have you crave anything we can think of that has salt in it. What has salt in it? It went way back to my childhood to steak juice, the blood. Blood has salt in it. When you're a kid, you cut yourself, you kind of lick your wound, it's salty. That's just what happens. And my body's like, well, do this or forget it. Anything we can have to make you have salt. And that's why I craved it. And after I did that, I never craved blood again.
Wow.
I set up my diet such that I would crave animal products. And if I didn't think about that, if I hadn't eaten the tamari, and if I didn't have an ethical framework in veganism, I would have eaten some salty burger, some salty piece of fish, some salty piece of flesh somewhere. And I would have thought, wow, look, animal products made me feel better. And it would have been partially true, but it would have been a setup. It would have been a false blame, a false credit. It was the salt. Now, in other people, it's not necessarily salt. But high fruit, high sugar diets lead to cravings of salt. You're going to crave salt even more. And it's one of the reasons that make people crave animal products. Sometimes people on fruitarian diets won't rinse their seaweeds, even though they're supposed to, because they just crave it so much. Something about them tells them. I used to rinse all my seaweeds when I was mostly fruitarian because I was a good fruitarian following the program. My wife, who was maybe more intuitive than I was, and she also had low blood pressure inherently, low blood sugar inherently, ran her family, she didn't rinse her kelp. In fact, she started preparing the meals ahead of time and hiding her kelp so I wouldn't rinse the damn salt off. She was more in tune and she had more issues. She had lower blood pressure, so it made sense.
So an adequate amount of salt overall.
Correct. Now, if you have no salt in your diet ever, your kidney is going to go in ultra conservation mode. It's going to work harder to preserve the salt you have, and you won't have as much hydration in your body. So if you eat a reasonable amount of salt after having no salt, temporarily you're going to get puffy. Your body's like, oh my God, hold on to every piece of that salt, every molecule of that salt. Don't let any go because we're not going to ever get any again. That's what your kidney thinks. So there comes a point of balance. You also don't want to have, a pillar of salt. You have to be reasonable. You have to be rational about that. There's a balance. There's a yin-yang here. And hopefully everyone's smart enough to understand that.
So about what like on the USDA I think says what 1,500 milligrams of salt.
I never measure anymore. I never measure it, so I don't know.
So an adequate amount of salt that each person needs to find out. I have a little bit of miso or some sauerkraut, with my salad every night, and that seems sufficient for me. Yes. You need to find out what's right for you.
How hot is it? How much are you sweating? How much physical activity? How much liquid? How much sweets and other things? And sugar and salt will balance each other out to a certain positive extent. They can also just be on the extremes. Adequate. You got to figure that out yourself. That's your homework.
All right. So what other nutrients can we be deficient in that may cause meat cravings?
Okay, other things that happens with both fruitarian and also just raw food diets in general, even when they're not fruitarian, even when they're no fruit. This applies to both of these things. Let's talk about the fruit part first, is protein. We need far less protein than most charts say. Far less. And there's some cultures that subsist on 20 or 30 grams of protein a day and they're super active. But therefore, does that mean that every single person only needs 20 or 30 grams of protein if they're doing a lot of activity? No, it doesn't. And I've seen so many people become protein deficient because they were on, let's say, fruitarian diets, which is so low in protein. Ultra low. 3, 4, 5%. It's just not nearly enough. And it may not be the right quality of protein in fruit. There are some people a few tiny amount of people that might be able to thrive long-term on fruitarianism. But if we're talking long-term, 10 years, I've yet to see it. I've yet to see a person go 10 years on fruitarianism and still thrive. We'll see if someone can come to the plate and do that yet. I've not even seen 5 years for people that were truly mostly fruitarian, not lying about their binges, not lying about their supplementation and so forth.
What about like Doug Graham? I mean, people out there, look up to Doug, and he's been doing this a long time. I mean, how do you explain that?
I look up to Doug too, and Doug was one of my early teachers in the raw foods world, and Doug is clearly buff and in shape. But Doug has taken B12 supplements. He's taken B12 injections. Doug's not perfect. He's messed up here and there in various degrees. I don't want to say exactly what because I don't want to have the rumors. But not most of the people, a huge percentage of the people that Doug teaches go off and eat meat. Why is there such a fall off? If it works for X amount of people, what Doug teaches, and it may work for X amount of people, and it might even work long term, we'll find out. But if I'd say minimum, in my experience, minimum of 80% of people it doesn't work for, and it sends them off into meat diets, junk food, or paleo diets, that needs to be looked at, and I think it needs to be presented as, this is a diet that may work for this amount of people. But if you have issues, here's how to fix it.
Good point.
Here's the issues. Here's how to fix it with complex carbohydrates. Here's how to fix it with salt. Here's how to fix it with lentil protein, with legume protein. Here's how to fix it with spirulina, with chlorella, with even protein supplements. You don't need to destroy your health and the environment and have no ethics by going and eating meat. It's the baby out with the bathwater in the worst possible way. And for those who think that fruitarian is working, for those who fruitarianism is working, if you're kicking ass as a mostly fruitarian, if you're kicking ass as an 80-10-10er, don't do anything I'm saying. Keep kicking ass. And I say that totally genuinely because I want you to be healthy and happy. You're eating an ethical diet. You're not killing anything. You're awesome. But be aware that in my experience, in my 27 years experience approximately to raw foods, and I'm not alone in this, the vast majority of people it doesn't work and you're going to turn them into staunch ex-vegans. Do you think that cooked lentils, do you think that salt, do you think that flax oil or flax seeds is better than animal products? And I know you do. So give them that as the option. Even if they're cheating or whatever you want to call it, let them do that rather than force their hand to go the other direction.
Wow. That's why I'm making this video, to get this important information out to you, to give you guys options. I'm not ever going to tell you guys what to do, but I want to let you guys know the options so you can make an informed decision and do the better thing, in my opinion. So, James, what other nutrients can be deficient?
Protein too.
Protein.
Let's talk about, that was protein on a fruitarian. You're simply not getting enough. Most people are not getting enough.
And obviously, like James just said, if it's working for you, keep it up, but keep this information in mind if it one day that potentially or possibly does change.
You don't have to compromise your ethics. You don't have to compromise the earth, and you can still say vegan. You don't have to you can do it all within a vegan paradigm without a doubt easily. Now,
and it's a healthier way to do it. See my other video where James talks about the 5 reasons why you want to eat more plants and not meat.
Yes. The other reason that people on, let's say, a raw foods type diet end up going back to meat, one of the reasons, we already talked about the salt, and these are people eating high nut diets, which is very high protein, higher protein than usually animal protein diets, and not a toxic protein, a good protein, clean, a lot of essential fatty acids in nuts, a lot of power acids in nutrition, just awesome things in there. And there's a difference between fats. Some fats are good, some fats are bad, but too much fat of any fat ends up being too much. You end up starting to produce more estrogen, having estrogen dominance, especially if there's no legumes or phytoestrogens built in there. And let's not go to the fat, it's the protein part. Eating a lot of protein. There's many people on raw food diets eating plenty of protein, nuts and seeds, that do not have musculature eating that nut and seed protein alone. It simply doesn't work. It takes them, in some cases, weeks to recover from working out. My wife Kim had that decades ago. It took her so long to recover when we were eating a high protein, all raw food diet. She's a Vada, all raw worked abysmally for her the way we did it at first. Absolutely abysmally. And she's not alone. She's not the only example. I've met so many people who just couldn't build muscle. They were losing weight on their raw food diet. Even sometimes they're eating a lot of calories, they're eating a lot of nuts, a lot of seeds. Their muscles are dwindling down. They're like, this sucks. And some people are like, all right, screw it. I'm tired of being wimpy. I'm tired of being skinny. I'm tired of not having energy. I'm tired of not having muscle mass. I can't build muscle anymore. At first they liked it because like, I'm trimmed, I'm lean, I'm clean, I feel awesome, I'm getting veins, I'm vascularized, I love this, I'm active. And then it just kept going. Some have eaten so much nuts and seeds they get fat. Others couldn't even get, they couldn't put weight on. And they're like, screw it, I'll just eat meat. Because I can't eat lentils, I can't eat legumes, I can't eat protein powders, vegan protein powders, I can't eat spirulina, I can't eat chlorella, I can't do any of this stuff. So I'll just do the other. It's been my experience that those people invariably, if they add the number one protein food you can add to your diet, in my opinion, the number one, even more important than spirulina and chlorella, which are godsends for your health. You should add those too. But even more important than that is the legume family. The legume family is higher in protein than animal products, and it's a different type of protein than you find in nuts and seeds. It's different, it has a different energy and a different quality for a lot of people. Now, I want to make sure everybody knows, when I was mostly fruitarian, I was buff, tough, and running marathons. I could do it. I could build muscle. I could pack it on. And it was awesome. It was clean. I was rotting the teeth out of my mouth, and I was getting bladder infections, and other things were starting to go wrong, and I had to stop. Other people can't even get to where I was at, so I have an experience with that. I didn't need to eat legume protein at that time. Other people did, and I've seen people on high nut and seed, high protein raw food diets wasting away, and then finally I'm able to convince them that not all cooked food is poison, that you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, that these things are unbelievably healing foods, whether it's lentils, chickpeas, organic non-GMO soybeans, black beans, red beans, aduki beans, whatever, snow peas, this, that, any of the legume family, when they add those to the diet, you've got, unless they're a fresh pea pod, you've got to cook them. All the dried peas and beans have got to be cooked to be digestible and healthy. That's an absolutely critical thing. We've talked about that in other talks. They add that to the diet, and if you soak and sprout them first and then cook them, there's no gastrointestinal issues whatsoever. Those people all of a sudden come to life. Their muscles come to life. Their brain comes to life. They're able to build and work out and be buff and tough and strong and energetic. But if they didn't do that, they would throw all that out, the whole legume world out, then probably even throw out a spirulina and chlorella paradigm out, which are unbelievably high in protein, and then probably throw out even a brown rice, organic brown rice, vegan protein, which are superior to whey and casein proteins, paradigm out, and go all the way to meat. We've got to give them option. This is such a better option. And let's talk briefly about the phytoestrogens in legumes. Phytoestrogens are considered the scourge of the world, and they're very high in soy foods. Because people think, here's the illogic, and please everybody, think of this. If you're a health professional, if you're an MD, if you're a regular person, please consider what I have to say. I'm not trying to shove it down your throat, but this is really, really important for you to understand. It's a baby with a bathwater. Estrogen, if your body makes too much estrogen, which it actually really doesn't, but if it does, and I'll go to that in a minute, it can promote breast cancer, uterine cancer, various different female cancers. And if you're a man, it can actually compete with your testosterone. You'll have less testosterone in your system, and it's not good. There's also petroleum products and other chemicals in the environment that are called xenoestrogens. And they come in from the outside, and they add to your body's own estrogen burden, and they make your situation even worse, and they contribute to cancers in both sexes. Now, is there something that in the world, in life, that Mother Nature, that God has put on this earth for us to protect us from these things? And the answer is yes. And it's phytoestrogens that are weak estrogens. Now, because they're weak estrogens from plants, people assume because actual estrogen and too much can cause cancer, because xenoestrogens, toxic chemicals from the outside, can cause cancers. Therefore, because the plants are weak estrogens, they promote cancer. We all on the same page there. Does that make sense, John?
Absolutely.
A little bit of this type of estrogen promotes cancer, so that type must promote it too.
I mean, it's like if A, then B, and B, then C.
Right.
I mean, that's like math, right?
Okay, that's math. If that were true, if this were an axiom, if this were a reality, a truth, if this were the way the world worked, then the cultures and the people that eat the most phytoestrogen foods, not supplements, not xenoestrogens, foods, phytoestrogen foods, legumes, would have the most cancers. Right? Phytoestrogens cause cancer.
It should do it that way.
Yeah, if this is true, it's got to work that way. You've got to have these populations having the most cancer, eating the most organic, non-GMO soybeans, lentils, chickpeas, all these things are legumes. It's got to work that way if this is true. And when we look at the Asian cultures, be it Japan, Okinawa, and China, that are eating the most whole organic soy foods, not supplements, again, not GMO crap, not raw, whole organic cooked soy and other lentils and other legumes, they have the least estrogen-based cancers, the least. So if you can just be like a dummy, like, duh, this caused cancer, this not cause cancer, no in between, you'll just throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you have a little bit of a scientific mind, and I'm not saying the readers or the listeners don't have it, but you've been taught from people that weren't thinking the whole picture. They weren't taught the whole picture, and they just pass it on because I trust that person, I believe them, I don't want to question their integrity. There's a difference between questioning someone's integrity and questioning their competency. It's totally different. I totally trust the person with my life, but they suck at doing this job, so I'm not going to have them do it. That's how it works. So, we find that they have the least amount of disease, the least amount of estrogen-based cancers. Here's why it works differently. Estrogens that your body makes, they're estrogen and they work as estrogen. Xenoestrogens, outside the body, they work as estrogens. Phytoestrogens from plants, as long as they're still in the whole plant food form, not supplements thereof, fill up the estrogen receptor sites in your body, male or female, and they prevent the xenoestrogen, or your body's own estrogens, from attaching to that cell, from attaching to the breast tissue, from attaching to the uterine tissue, from inhibiting testosterone in men. They attach it and they don't let these bad estrogens get in. They are protecting you. They fit into the same receptor site.
Wow, so we need these things.
We need these things in any way, and especially in today with more xenoestrogens coming in. But they're one of the reasons that legumes, soy being the pinnacle legume, have such a bad rap. And it's totally the opposite reaction. I've seen women doing tofu and tempeh who totally balanced their hormones. All of a sudden they didn't have breast tenderness, they couldn't even tell when their period was happening, they had no cramping, very little blood. When they got on to could be either whole, cooked, organic, non-GMO soy, or some of them use lentils, some of them use chickpeas, some of them use black beans, some of them use, there's other legumes too, some of them use carob, some of them use alfalfa, some of them use peanuts with the oil poured off the top and the peanut butter. That's also legume to balance their hormones. They get off that because they get on a raw food program. And all cooked food is poison. All of it. Every single piece of cooked food is poison, and that's not part of a raw food program. They get onto a high-fat raw program, which all other factors being equal, the more fat you do, even healthy fats, the more, and I'm not sure how coconut works in this, I haven't tested it, it's the only one. But other than that, the more fat you consume, the more estrogen your body makes, male or female.
So you become a girl if you eat a high-fat diet.
Not really, but somewhat. So you go from the protective phytoestrogenic diet of cooked legumes to high-fat, no protection in there, and all of a sudden, now you're having breast tenderness. Now you are having cancers forming. Now you're having blood. Now you're having menstrual cramps. And I've seen so many women do that, say, well, those things saved my life in the past, but I can't go back to them because they're not raw. They were healthier for me, made me feel better, but they're not raw. I think I'm just cleansing. I think I'm just detoxing. I think I just needed to cleanse through my uterus. I need to cleanse through my menses. The body's so stupid that it wants you to have long, painful menses to cleanse through. That's ridiculous. But it's the mentality. It's because the authorities they go to say, oh no, that's bad. Soy's bad because raw soy is bad for you. It's hard to digest. GMO soy is bad for you. And isolated parts of soy are horribly toxic for you because they're individual phytoestrogens not balanced by the entire whole that can have negative hormonal consequences that never occur in the whole foods. The people in the Asian countries, that the benefits with the soy foods, the more they ate, the better benefits they had, never took an isolated isoflavone supplement from soy. They never took GMO soy and they never took inorganic soy. They had whole soy foods that always were cooked. If you don't want to have soy, you're allergic to soy, think it's crap, don't ever eat it. Just get it out of your life, have chickpeas, have the hundreds of other lentils you can possibly consume. The thing that's even higher in phytoestrogens than soy, it blows soy away. Soy's number 2 sort of phytoestrogens, is flax seeds. Flax seeds are multiple times higher in phytoestrogens. And if they're the case, that phytoestrogens cause cancer, then the experimental animals, the pet animals, the human beings that ate more flax seeds and the cell cultures that we fed more flax seeds to would have the most cancer. It would be the most deadly cancer-causing, estrogen-based cancer-causing food on the planet. Let's frame that. Study in Canada several years ago that was barely reported in the news. Women took 2 tablespoons of flax seeds in the 2 to 4 weeks between they were diagnosed with breast cancer and they were going to get either a mastectomy or a lumpectomy. Either take the whole friggin' breast off or just take the tumor out and disfigure the woman and have her have self-esteem issues and so forth. Take out tissue, go under a surgery, have some complications, bleed, etc. In the 2 to 4 weeks, 2 tablespoons of flax seeds. They came back after that 2 and 4 weeks with flax seeds, this ultra-high estrogenic food. You should have thought that the tumor was bigger than their breast at that point, because if you were going to promote it, this would do it. Mega phytoestrogens. I hope I haven't beat that too much, but I hope it's clear. This would cause cancer for sure in women that already had cancer. That weren't taking flax seeds previous, by the way. When they came back 2 to 4 weeks later, it found that all of them had reductions in breast tumor size just by adding the flax seeds. Some of them 50%.
Wow.
That's all they did was 2 freaking tablespoons of flax seeds ground on the coffee grinder every day with massive phytoestrogens.
Wow, that's easy to do.
That's a piece of cake, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. You can do so much more. So what do they do with this crazy, malicious, barbaric, medical, peer-reviewed, double-blind, placebo-controlled study?
Fill out more flax seeds, right? So that they can heal themselves.
No, of course not.
No?
No, they went ahead and had surgery. Does that make any logical sense? It's like, take 2 more tablespoons of flax seeds and call me in the morning. That's insane. That should be medical malpractice. That and so many other studies with both flaxseed oil and far superior the whole flax seeds have shown that flax seeds, because flaxseed oil has very little phytoestrogens but has omega-3s and a lot of other things, the whole flax seeds are unbelievably protective, in some cases remedial, of cancers and other harmful challenges. And here's one more thing to throw in the pot. 2 more things that are really critical to understand. There was a study done by the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, Washington, D.C. group, headed by an incredible researcher and incredible hero called Neil Bernardes, an MD. He did a study with women and he put them on low-fat, whole food vegan. Not raw, not anything like that. Less than 10% of the calories from fat, just from a regular, normal, probably 30% calorie from fat diet. For their menstrual challenges. All of them were having menstrual challenges. He put them on this diet and everybody had improvement or absolute cessation of their menstrual cycle, of their menstrual issues. All of them on that low fat. All they did was the lower fat. He then asked them to go back to the high fat diet to make a relative comparison. And they agreed to do this in advance. It was part of their agreement. None of them would do it. They said, no, sue me. I'm not going to participate in your study anymore because I don't want to ever go back to that. I'm convinced. And they considered that a successful study. Take it a next step. I've seen women who for some reason feel they need to eat, or it's just fun to eat a lot of fat. There's certain fatty foods that taste good. I'm talking healthy fats like avocados or nuts and seeds or some flax oil or chia oil. Things that are like food, not garbage, inorganic oils in plastic bottles, not animal fats. I'm talking like healthy fats. If you want to do it with garbage fats, you can do it, but you're going to destroy your health in other ways. As long as they have enough healthy whole food, phytoestrogens in their diet, as long as flax seeds is enough part of it, not necessarily flaxseed oil, you have to have the flax seeds, as long as either soybeans or chickpeas or legumes or mung beans cooked, or alfalfa or carob or peanuts with the oil pouring off the peanut butter on the top, because those are all legumes with phytoestrogens. As long as they had enough of that, red clover is also a phytoestrogen. As long as they had enough of that, they still didn't have any menstrual challenges because the phytoestrogens protect them from all that fat. It's so powerful. Phytoestrogens are built in foods, and there's so many more foods that have phytoestrogens that I'm not even sure I want to tell people here because they'll stop eating everything that are helping to protect you right now. Sesame seeds is another one. They're not a legume, but they also have phytoestrogens in them. And what I do with my sesame seeds is I take the oil on the top of my tahini to make an incredible sesame seed dressing, and I pour it off. I actually burn candles with it. One day I'm going to make biodiesel with it. And I have a mega concentration of natural concentration of phytoestrogens in there, and it's already lower fat to begin with. And the fat in that sesame seeds, the oil that comes to the top, you can use it for massage, you can use it for so many other different things, you can wax your furniture with it. And I'm saving so many calories by pouring that oil off. And I still have a killer tahini dressing with tahini and miso and ginger and a little water, lemon, whatever you want to put in there. It's like, God, that is so good. I get to eat like 5 times the amount of tahini dressing because I save so many calories in the fat, or double the tahini dressing and way more kelp, or a half an avocado, or even some olives, or other things, or even things that don't have any fat, or I can even have some grains with it, some just cooked grains, not fried, either boiled or steamed, or some lentils or some other legumes, or a baked potato, a bunch of them, because I didn't have all that oil in the tahini. And my nutrient density has gone up. I could eat a boatload of food more with still less calories, no estrogenic issues. And for those of who still break out when they're older like me with oil, you're not going to break out either. And I break out with acne still when I have too much oil. And you get to have more fun eating more food. And there's more fiber going in your system.
So we want to eat an adequate amount of fat, right? Like not all fat's bad. We want to eat a whole food source of fat in an adequate amount. So how much is too much? I mean, some of these raw food programs advocate like less than 10% of calories from fat. I mean, is that healthy, Jamie? Should we eat like 40% fat? I mean, you were talking about that earlier. That can't be good. I mean, what's the range? I know everybody's different and pulling numbers out is pretty tough sometimes, but there's got to be somewhere so that, you know, people could know where they want to start and experiment with.
In my experience, 40% of fat, 40% of calories coming from fat is too much optimally for everybody. You would never be able to do that in a state of nature. You couldn't harvest that many nuts and seeds to eat it. It just wouldn't work. And you're certainly not going to be making oil in nature. It's totally not natural to eat that much fat in nature. And I've never seen it work optimally for anybody. You can do damage control too, but why eat that much? 10% I think is actually okay for some people, depending on what they're doing, what kind of lifestyle they're leading. I think that's absolutely fine. I don't think you need to be worried about it. And that's pretty much you're not eating any nuts or seeds, you're not eating any avocados, and you're just eating all the other foods, all of which have a little bit of fat in them. Some of them, even like oats and oatmeal, have a little bit of omega-3s in them and so forth. I think that can be fine. There's some of you that might need or want a little bit more than that. I think you can go anywhere, let's say between 10 and 25, depending on what you're doing, what type of fat. That's my approximate range for people. If you have, let's say, some air pop organic popcorn, I'd say put a little bit of flaxseed or coconut oil on there, actually mix them both together, a little bit of Celtic sea salt, then maybe a little bit more. And if you're a woman and you're worried about that, make sure that you have it with a lot of legumes. And you will not have hormonal challenges. You won't have female problems. It's just so powerful. And men, you don't see it as obviously because you don't have a cycle, but it's just as powerful for men to do this legume protein and these phytoestrogens. Organic, non-GMO.
So if you want to make it easy for people, Jamie, that don't want to have to like cook their legumes and sprout them, do you have a product actually just with actually that kind of that stuff in it, so you can just supplement it in your smoothie every day?
Well, somewhat. It's not really a supplement, but I do have a product called Friendly Fats, which is 70% slightly sprouted flax and then 30% slightly sprouted chia seeds. Extremely digestible, which you can put in your smoothies every day. Or go buy some flax seeds, grind them up in your coffee grinder, and throw them in. Whatever you can do. Either one's awesome. Or carobs. Carob's a legume. Throw carob, make a carob shake, make a carob smoothie. Alfalfa, the herb, get dried alfalfa herb, which I have some of in some of my products, Vitamin Green, but you're probably going to want more of that. Another amazing legume, and people have had good results with just this alone, depending on how much fat they're having, is astragalus root. Astragalus is a legume. It helps to increase lifespan, helps to increase your DNA telomere length, it makes you younger. It's a phenomenal healing herb. It's the primary ingredient in my product, Vitamin Earth, which is the counterpart to Vitamin Green, critical, and you can throw that in your smoothie. Actually, that won Best Smoothie Ad Award last year. Or just get astragalus root. I mean, I've got it built into a whole complex of formula that does a tremendous amount of other healing things, which we're not going into right now. Either get it or get some astragalus root. Those are other things you can do. Red clovers, red clover is one of the bases of the famous ESSIAC anti-cancer formula. It is a legume. It has phytoestrogens in it, healthy ones.
So we want to include these in our diet instead of exclude them like some programs may advocate.
Correct.
All right, James, so what other nutrient deficiencies, aside from the ones we learned about already, can get people from maybe like a fruitarian style diet onto eating animals, for some nutrients that they're missing?
Critical nutrient that you hear about with vegans a lot, that every vegan is deficient in this nutrient. One of them is being iron. And this is such a half-truth, and I want to give you the truth about iron. If you are in a fruitarian or high-fruit diet where you're not having enough greens, not enough kale, not enough collards, not enough other greens, parsley, spirulina, chlorella, superfoods, nettles, dandelion, horsetail, things that are replete with non-toxic, awesome iron, you can absolutely become deficient in iron. And if you set yourself up by just eating fruit and avoiding things with iron, and then someone gives you something from an animal product that has high iron, well, all of a sudden your iron is going to be up, you'll have more energy, and you think, oh, well, look, I need animal products. But you didn't use all the choices, and we're considering the toxicity of that animal product. Let's not even consider the toxicity of that animal product right now. Let's just talk about iron sufficiency. Iron is different in an animal product than a vegetable food, and you've been told this, we've been taught this, and it's a half-truth. And I used to get in heated discussions, debates with people about the difference between heme iron, which you find in animal products, red meat, other animal products, mostly in blood, and you find in a supplement, heme iron, versus non-heme iron, which you find in vegetable foods, which is claimed to be less absorbable, and it's a half-truth. Here's the half where it's true. If you are already sufficient in iron, and you take vegetable source iron, spirulina, chlorella, dandelion, nettles, kale, collards, parsley, whatever happens to be, the greens, you will not absorb that iron well. That iron is poorly absorbed. So in that case, the statement's true. Supplemental iron or animal iron is more absorbable than vegetable iron if you have enough iron in your system. So let's get that absolutely true. But let's take it to another step. What happens if you have too much iron in your system? And what can give you too much iron in your system? If you take too much of a supplement or too much of an animal product, you can easily get too much iron in your system. And there's people that actually have to go and get their blood drawn periodically because their iron levels are too high. Now, why is that bad if your iron levels are too high? Because iron is an oxidant. It's the opposite of an antioxidant. It creates free radical damage, which is the basis of all aging in human beings. It creates it in your body, and it destroys your health if you have too much iron in your system. Animal products and supplements absorb at a flat rate whether you need it or not. Vitamin supplements that have iron in them, most of the multiples have had iron removed from it. And you'll see on the labels that it says, warning, accidental overdose of iron-containing supplements is a chief cause of fatal poisoning in children under 6. Mommy take pill, baby take pill, Flintstones vitamins, whatever it happens to be. Nice crunchy vitamins, tasty things, you do things, and the kids are dead. Dead, because they had too much iron. Let's change the paradigm and see how it works now. If you are deficient in iron, and you take an animal iron or a supplemental iron, those heme irons will absorb at a certain rate. But when you're deficient in iron, the vegetable non-heme iron absorbs at a greater rate than the animal iron or the supplemental iron because you need it. Because the non-heme iron has protein and bioflavonoid and lipid and mineral and other complexes around it to allow the body to say, you know what, I want to unwrap you, package of organically bound iron, or I don't. When the body's deficient, it unwraps the iron package that you only find in whole foods or dried whole food superfood supplements.
Plant foods.
Plant foods. It has to be a plant food. It's the only place that all those complexes come out.
And you can't get too much iron by eating
It's impossible. It's impossible. You cannot raise your iron level too high by eating the whole plant foods with the whole complex of nutrients around it.
But you can with the animal products.
Correct. Nature built that in. You can't kill yourself with spirulina. It's just not possible. You can't get too much iron from kale. All these things we talked about. It's amazing built in. So bring on the spirulina. Bring me 5,000% of the RDA of iron, which I have done multiple times over the years. Multiple days and weeks with various different superfoods. When I take my blood, I look at it regularly, I'm never too high in iron. I'm never too low with it. It's just perfect. It's where my body wants it to be. That applies to so many other nutrients too. Iodine is not something people are necessarily deficient in. They can be on a fruitarian diets because there's not that many minerals in the soil. Iodine, we know iodine when you get it in a solution has a skull and crossbones on it. It's deadly if you take too much. You can take any quantity of iodine in the form of whole seaweeds, not an extract thereof, in the form of whole seaweeds or seaweed powders and superfood products, and there's no toxicity of the iodine. I am a living testament to that, and there's hundreds of thousands of other meat that take way beyond the safe level of iodine in whole food form. Not sprayed on the whole foods, within the organic matrix of the whole food. It's so different. It applies the same to iron. So it is so easy to get iron from superfoods, from greens. There's no reason to set up a craving for meat or eat meat to get iron. And it's actually toxic iron. And I said earlier, maybe we didn't catch it on tape, in the early days when I'd argue with that over people about heme and non-heme iron, sometimes I would end it with, let's just have an arm wrestle and decide it out. And I never lost, and I never lost the challenge. Because if I was vegan, and I am vegan for about approximately 26 or 7 years, they should have been able to waste me in an arm wrestle. And it never happened. Anybody that was non-vegan should have been able to waste me in an arm wrestle. Anybody at all. And that wasn't the case. It's just not true. We have so many athletes being vegan, MMA fighters, boxers, Olympic athletes. It's just not necessary. B12. Let's talk about B12. B12 is an issue for everybody that's alive. B12, there's a lot of debate on where it will come from, what superfoods provide it, what things don't. But I want to distill it down to what you can absolutely guarantee. B12 is made by bacteria. It's made by bacteria in soil. It's made by bacteria in your intestines. It's also then deposited in your flesh tissue. So, if you eat an animal product, there is B12 in it. But it's looked at like a vegetarian or vegan issue. And it's not. Because 40% of the average American population, 40% of the meat-eating American population is B12 deficient. So clearly, it is not a vegan issue. But if you're vegan and you're B12 deficient, it's because you're vegan. It's not because 40% of the average population is. It's an issue for everybody alive. Is it because we don't have any healthy, quality, organic dirt or other things on our farm, carrots and things like that? There may be things like that. I don't know the exact answer. Here is the easy solution that whether you're eating meat or you're vegan, you become B12 deficient. Either take a B12 supplement, which is so easy. You just take a B12 supplement. Actually, B vitamins are water soluble. They have no toxicity like certain fat soluble vitamins and like minerals. You can take a supplement of it. Or you can do what I do and just take probiotics, and I have probiotics and a lot of the different products I take them every day for health, and they make all the B12 I need. I haven't had a B12 supplement or any B12 for an animal. I haven't had animals in 27 years or a B12 supplement, and my B12 levels and everything associated with are absolutely optimum. I do not supplement whatsoever. That's probably because of the things I consume, either the green foods in combination with the probiotics. And I've actually done tests to show that you can reverse B12 deficiency just with my product Vitamin Row Green on multiple people.
All right, Jamie, so that was some really important information on B12, and I definitely agree with you. Some of my areas of study lately has been into actually growing organically and improving the soil and actually some of the bacteria in the soil that actually produce the B12. I mean, where does a cow get its B12 from? It's from the soil, and because of soil depletion, the minerals being washed away, and the soil bacteria being deficient, I think that may be one of the issues. But as James said, really simple and easy to solve. Just take a supplement. I mean, I already do this, although I'm working on improving my soils to make my plants have the B12 and then I'll eat them. But until that time, I definitely take the Vitamin Row Green and a supplement just to be safe instead of sorry. So, Jamie, are there any other reasons why somebody would want to start eating meat from, being a fruitarian or raw vegan in some instances?
Yes. And actually, there's two reasons. One is wrong calories. They can be misinterpreted. If you're on a raw foods or a vegan, non-animal product diet, whatever it happens to, raw cook, doesn't matter, and you're eating 1,000 calories a day because you're trying to eat pure, you're trying to just eat rabbit foods, just fruits and vegetables, just salad, you're losing weight, you're feeling great at some point, but then at some point you're like, your body is really, really hungry. You're only having 1,000 calories and you need 2,000. You're only at half wattage. What happens at that point, even if it's the purest food, even if it's the best diet that I could design that was totally sufficient in nutrients, I could design a diet that had superfoods and greens and herbs and superfruits and other things that was totally sufficient in nutrients. Never could you ever be deficient in any nutrient. And if I just had 1,000 calories a day of it and I was burning 2,000 calories, I would eventually get sick. What happens is your thyroid, which controls your metabolism, would slow your entire metabolism down. It's like the idle of a car going... Because here's why your body slows your metabolism down. Because it knows that we are in starvation mode, and if we don't slow down our metabolic rate, slow down the rate we make enzymes, slow down the rate we make eye tissue, slow down the rate we make liver tissue, we make muscle tissue, we make blood cells, everything's got to go into life preservation mode. We're going to die faster because this person's never going to eat enough calories again, and we want to stay alive. We want to keep this bozo alive who's only eating 1,000 calories and needs 2,000. Your thyroid will slow you down. You're totally lethargic. If you then go to, if that's your comparison, then you go to a meat diet where all of a sudden you can eat a lot of calories. You can eat 2,000 calories, let's say. Higher fat, higher protein, higher caloric density than just fruits or vegetables in this case. You're going to feel better. Your thyroid's going to be like, wow, I don't need any more nutrients, but all of a sudden I have more calories. I can turn the generator up. I can light more lights. I can power more things. I can power more systems in your body. I'm a more powerful generator. Right there is a reason that some people mistake I needed to go on that paleo diet, that meat diet, even that McDonald's diet. Huge issue, huge issue. Don't fall in that trap. Eat more healthy, kick-ass vegan food to the right amount of calories. Let's compare apples to apples, and you don't have to sacrifice your health, your ethics, or the planet.
So Jimmy, what about eating like too many calories? Obviously, eating not enough, not good. But what about like too many calories?
Okay.
Is that ever an issue? And then
Yes.
can that cause people to eat meat and go to the dark side?
Yes, I'd like to call it that, the dark side. Let's give an example of a really otherwise good diet that's too many calories. You're on a mostly raw food diet. Clean, pure, whole, organic, non-GMO, nothing toxic, kick-ass diet that many people have overcome huge degenerative diseases on. But it is 50% fat. Huge amount of fat, and fat has so many calories in a small, tiny amount of space. That's why they always have nuts and seeds in trail mix, because you can eat this little tiny almond versus a whole bunch of cauliflower, a whole bunch of fruit, or even a good portion of grains or legumes or steamed vegetables. Instead, a big portion or this little tiny amount of fat. So you eat not a lot of food, but a huge amount of fat. So you're having 4,000 calories in a day. Or 3,000. You need 2. You're eating 2 or 3.
Well, it depends on your activity level also.
Yeah, but let's say the same person is eating 2. Now they're eating 3,000 or 4,000 calories because they're having so much fat. Not eating a lot of food, just a ton of fat. Healthy, clean fat. Their arteries aren't getting messed up. They're having some estrogen issues because they're not having enough phytoestrogens, even if they are. Too much fat. They're sluggish, they're fat. When you're fat, you have less energy by definition versus when you're not fat. It's not good. You have to have more blood vessels. Your heart, you only still have one engine. It still has to pump just as hard. You need to make more blood. It just taxes your body tremendously. So if you go on a diet that's, let's say, a weight loss diet or a body type diet or a paleo diet that has leaner meats, let's say, a leaner meat than massive quantities of high fats, nuts, and seeds. All of a sudden, you went from a 4,000 calorie diet where you're fat down to a diet where it's 2,000 calories. All of a sudden, you're losing weight. You have thousands of miles less blood vessels to feed your fat ass. And you also think, wow, I feel so much better. I could never be vegan. I could never be plant-based again. I was just exhausted. You've got to compare apples to apples. You've got to compare oranges to oranges. It's got to be the same thing. You're eating way too much nuts and seeds, and you need to eat some whole food, vegan cooked foods. Like legumes, like healthy grains, like potatoes, like steamed vegetables, these things that are nourishing. Huge problem, too many calories the wrong direction. There's one other reason that we didn't talk about that's very popular that I want to talk about.
Okay.
That people will go onto, let's say, a paleo type diet or a meat diet, depending on what it is, and think that veganism didn't work or a plant-based diet didn't work. If you do have gluten intolerance, now, gluten-free, it's really popular today because of the latest thing. When it was Epstein-Barr syndrome, or everyone had that. Back when Candida was popular, everybody had Candida. There's certain diseases and things that's really popular to have. Gluten-free is really popular because gluten's toxic. It'll kill you. It's like kryptonite. It destroys your brain. It destroys your heart. It destroys your lung tissue. It destroys the lining, the cellular lining of your intestinal tract. That's I'd say probably a quarter truth. Because for a quarter, maybe a quarter of the people in the world, maybe less, but that's a good chunk of the people, they are gluten intolerant. The gluten is like kryptonite to them. My wife happens to have hardcore celiac disease, so I'm really, really intimately familiar with this. Even essence of gluten cooking somewhere,
Wow.
or even dehydrating, makes them sick.
Wow.
And it destroys their life, destroys their bones. Some people go schizophrenic. So for some people, gluten is absolutely poisonous. That you find in the best breads you can imagine, with wheat, barley, rye. Have gluten in them. So if you're gluten intolerant, and you go from a diet, a plant diet that happens to have a lot of whole wheat spaghetti versus brown rice spaghetti, that happens to have lots of breads versus non-gluten breads that has, not grain-based, but gluten grain-based foods, and then you go to a paleo diet or a gluten-free diet that also happens to include meat, and you got rid of gluten, and you feel so much better. So much better. You give the paleo diet, the meat, the non-plant-based diet the credit when you're simply gluten intolerant. You went from one thing that can take your bones down to animal protein that can take your bones down just as much. You went from one poison to another poison. You don't need to do that. You can do it within a vegan paradigm. And there's a huge difference between gluten intolerance and wheat allergy. I have a wheat allergy. I'm allergic to wheat. Regular hybrid wheat. I get sniffly, I get flu-like symptoms. I get, nasally and so forth. I can eat all the spelt and kamut, which have gluten in them, which are ancient wheats I can imagine with no issue. That's different than gluten intolerance. People with gluten intolerance can't have gluten at all. So just go gluten-free. Gluten-free vegan is easy to do. I'm 99% gluten-free because my wife is 100% and I have to be, otherwise she isn't. That's another reason that people abandon a plant-based diet for something else, not knowing that all they need to do was remove gluten from their diet. You can still eat grains. You can still eat millet. You can eat amaranth. You can eat quinoa. You can eat teff.
Buckwheat.
You can eat buckwheat. And you can get pastas and products made out of all of this stuff. Brown rice as well. And you don't have to have gluten. The only thing that you can't have at the moment is really kick-ass bread. They haven't perfected that gluten-free yet. Wait till my company, Integrity Foods, gets rolling. I'm going to provide some of that for you. But that's the only thing that's hard to do. And there's lots of alternatives for that we've been creative, and it's just easy. That's it. Easy to do.
Wow.
My point is that no matter what your individual biochemistry is, and we all have individual biochemistry, there's not the raw diet, the plant-based diet, the vegan diet, the whatever diet. Well, no matter what your individual biochemistry is, it's my clinical experience and my research experience and my life experience with people that you absolutely can solve that the best within a whole plant food paradigm. It's not that you can get by that's the best solution. It is within that giant framework of options, and there's tons of options within that.
Wow, this has been very informational. I mean, you guys got a full-on lecture here for free on YouTube so that you can now eat more plants, stay raw, stay plant-based instead of going to the meat, going to the dark side. So, Jamie, there's a lot of information in here. I want to sum this up for just some of the people. So, really simply and quickly, we went over all the detailed information. I want to give them some guidelines on some of the nutrients that may be helpful in the right amounts for them. And of course, we can't say what that amount is. You don't want to get too much of some of these nutrients, but you don't want to get too little. So the number one thing we need to do if you're eating fruits or a raw foods diet and it's not working, you're considering eating meat is what?
Make sure you're not eating too much sugar, not eating too much fruit.
Not too much sugar. Excellent.
Correct.
So you need to balance that out with other foods because there's a whole bunch of foods, and don't just limit, I can only eat fruits because that's what I need to eat. No, there's so many foods, as you just heard in this entire talk here, that you can eat that are quite healthy.
Yes.
So number two, what's another thing we need to do?
Make sure you're eating enough foods that are nutrient dense. Like the other foods you're eating other than fruit shouldn't be white sugar, white flour, and hydrogenated oil. Hello? That has no nutrients. It's crap. You gotta eat nutrient-dense foods.
Top nutrient-dense foods. Leafy green vegetables, some of Jana's superfood powders that makes it convenient and easy to consume if you don't want to harvest from your own garden.
Even if you do harvest from your own garden, doing things like spirulina and chlorella and seaweeds and so forth is yet an additional added adjunct to up your nutrition. You gotta make sure you have enough nutrient-dense foods.
Absolutely.
Fruits and vegetables. Because what I've got in my superfoods is fruits and vegetables. They're not supplements. You've got to focus on massive quantities of fruits and vegetables to prevent deficiency.
And somebody can do just fruits and vegetables. They need a sufficient amount and wide variety.
Correct.
Without buying your powdered foods in a bottle.
Correct.
Yes. So
if you want to take it to the next level, that's the whole nother level of kick-ass nutrient density and intensity.
Right. And it can make things significantly easier for many people because it's very convenient.
And better. It's my experience. I've never seen someone on a healthy enough diet in today's day and age with access to enough things that are incredible enough that this wouldn't make it even better.
I definitely agree. I have a personal testimonial experience with taking Vitamin Mineral Green for many years, and I just feel better when I take it. All right, James. So what other things do we need to do, besides eating nutrient-dense foods and eating a wide variety of foods
and not eating too much sugar
and not eating too much sugar and fruit?
You need to make sure you get enough protein in your diet, enough of the protein that's going to work for you. And for some people, it could be nuts and seeds, but if you have too many nuts and seeds, you end up getting too much fat. And we have all other issues that we talked about earlier with too many calories, too much estrogen produced, and so forth. I would ask you to consider and be open to adding legumes. Legumes have got to be cooked. They form toxins when they're sprouted, and when they're raw, they still have toxins. You have got to cook them. Anyone in the raw food community who's ever had raw chickpea sprouted hummus knows the unbelievable gastrointestinal issues that happen with that. But it's raw, it's got enzymes, it's supposed to be digestible. You have to let that go and throw that out. And if you go to some other lectures here, you'll see why that's not the case. And in my book coming up about 6 months, I will detail why that is not the case and why it's a totally different paradigm with enzyme. If you steam or cook, actually boil those lentils, you've got lentils, legumes, soybeans, chickpeas, mung beans, you've got to cook them. the protein in there is a totally different quality than nuts and seeds, that many people require that protein and that phytoestrogenic balance for them to be healthy and for them to build muscle. Some people actually have better results with protein from grains than they do from nuts and seeds. And depending on what your body type is, you may need to do that. And there's nothing wrong with eating grains as long as you're not gluten intolerant or if you eat grains that are completely gluten-free.
I definitely agree. You want to get enough protein. I happen to eat raw myself, a 99.999% raw foods diet, and that's the way I want to do it, but it doesn't mean you need to do that. Cooking your food, in my opinion, is far better than going to the dark side and eating animal products.
And when we're talking about cooking food, we're talking about, we're not talking about frying or microwaving, we're talking about wet heat for the most part, boiling or steaming them. Baking potatoes and things like that, there's no fat, is fine too. That's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
Now, John, you're 90.9% raw, but you're still here, you're functional, you're strong.
I don't know if I can beat you in arm wrestle, but
your blood levels are good, you're monitoring your health, you're a healthy, vibrant guy who was severely immune compromised before going in this, and you're not now. So, would I say, John, you need to eat something cooked right now? No. Am I beating down your door?
No.
No. Now, if you were like emaciated, or you were sick, or your immune problem had other things that were classic symptoms of like, John, there's something you need from something that you can only eat healthfully cooked,
I would totally do it.
I'd be beating him up, and I could, because if he's so weak, I could take him easy, if that was the case. But that's not the case, so there's no reason. I'm not harping on John to do that, but I do harp on some other people that clearly are going in that direction.
We're giving you guys options if that's what you want to do. I do it all raw. I mean, there's plenty of protein in the spirulina and chlorella that I take in my leafy greens, eating enough quantity of that stuff. I take some of the legumes and, carob powders and peanuts, which is a leguminous pod.
Yes.
I grow beans every year in my garden. I eat them fresh when they're baby and young, so they have minimal amount of the toxic lectins and other things in there. So, what this all is about balance. If you're eating too much of any one thing is not good. We want to eat a wide variety and little bits of everything so we get a good balance.
And John, what you've created in your yard with your garden and so forth is, see, you're eating those peas, which when they're fresh and have water content, they don't have those issues. They don't have the enzyme, the protein, the nutrient inhibitors in them. It's only when they're dried do they have that. You are getting that protein that most people don't get. You're getting it right from your garden. You're eating the Garden of Eden to a certain extent. I mean, you just need to grow an algae pond and a few other things and maybe bring some seaweeds in.
You could grow spirulina in a fish tank in your house. You could. I'll have an episode on that soon.
John is in an unusual situation that he's creating a closer variety of the Garden of Eden. And if you do that, then it's easier.
And I teach you guys how to do that on my other YouTube channel, over 700 videos, growingyourgreens.com. That's why I'm so passionate about growing food, because that truly is one of my answers to living sustainably on this diet, by growing your own food and eating the highest quality food that you can't find in a bottle.
Yes. All other factors being equal, fresh is better.
So, James, what other nutrients do we need in our diet so that we don't have to go to the dark side and start eating meat?
The other nutrient we talked about is iron. Heme iron being from animal products and supplements, having a toxicity, being an oxidant, creating free radicals, actually killing children and damaging adults, sometimes killing them if they get too much. You need to make sure you get enough from greens. It's non-toxic and completely absorbable, balanced absorption in plants, and you can't absorb too much from plants. The plants don't let you, the body doesn't let you. You get to make that selective decision. It's totally different. Make sure you have enough greens in your diet.
Yeah, greens are very important. That's why I like to eat a balance of greens and my fruits. A lot of people may be eating, in my opinion, too much fruits without enough greens. And there's so many more varieties of greens to eat than just romaine lettuce, and each one has a whole spectrum of different nutrient phytochemicals that I want you guys to eat.
And if you think, well, I can't do that, I'm busy, I'm this, and all I can have is salads, well, get a bottle of Vitamin Green, or get some Elite Green Protein, or some of the other green, amazing combinations of ultra-high mineral absorbable foods that I've got that Mother Nature made, and I just assembled and put in a bottle vessel that is a massive influx of whole food nutrients that can take anyone's diet to the next level. But especially if you can't get all those things, it's easy. Bam! Solution. Until you can get back to the Garden of Eden.
Absolutely.
Not a supplement, a superfood concentrate.
Absolutely agree. So what other nutrients do we need to ensure that we don't start eating meat?
B12.
B12, that's an easy one too.
40% of the meat eating population is deficient in B12. Two things. The easiest thing for the average person to do, so you don't have to think about it, is just take a B12 supplement. The probiotics that I have and the Vitamin Green and possibly in other products will completely reverse that. In some people, everyone I've tested so far, don't know if that will happen with everybody, but if you do that, because it's a universal worldwide problem, B12 deficiency for everybody, if you're going to do it without a supplement, at least every once a year, get your methylmalonic acid level checked, which is one of the best determinants of B12 status, and make sure you're sufficient. And if you're not, do something different. And if you have to, take a supplement, no issue, solve the problem, case done. Easy. Whether you're eating meat or not, 40% of the meat eaters are B12 deficient, not a vegan plant-based issue.
So the next issue, that you may have a deficiency with to start craving some blood is easy. It's salt. Now, I know a lot of people shun salt like salt's bad. No, we need an adequate amount of salt. Too much is not good. I'm not saying dump salt on everything, neither is Jameith. You want to get just enough that's right for you, and you need to figure out what that is. I always encourage you guys to get it from a whole food source whenever possible, but you got to eat a lot of celery to get it from celery. So, something like sea vegetables, and what are some other good sources, Jameith?
Sea vegetables is a great source. Celtic sea salt, Himalayan sea salt. There's a lot of different varieties of that. Some I like, some I don't. My favorite sources are actually miso, because miso is extremely anti-cancer, extremely anti-radiation, high in antioxidants, just phenomenally good for you, and it has salt on the side. Always organic, and gluten-free organic tamari is would be my next, because there's a whole host of phytonutrients in there, so I get phytonutrients with my salt. And then I go to the Celtic sea salt, Himalayan sea salt, real salt, rock salt type things like that. Salts with 100 or so other elements in there that are beneficial, along with maybe 50 or 60 different minerals in small quantities, rather than just refined, iodized, inorganic iodized, toxic crap salt. This is a whole different world of salt. It's totally healthier.
And I'll have a video for you guys soon on salt specifically, so stay tuned for that one. So Jameith, are there any other things that we need to do? Once again, this is the summary for you guys, so you need to make a checklist of these things, and guess what? This is only the things that Jameith have come up with. I always encourage you guys to have, once again, nutritional variety and get all the different nutrients. There's so many different things that you need to eat, and if you're not paying attention like a researcher or like me, where I'm really wanting to make sure I get all my nutrients so I'm not nutrient deficient, so I don't go to the dark side, because many people in our society, and we're taught in our society, which really upsets me, to follow the leader. And if the leader's not doing it right, or maybe the leader is the exception to the rule, and you follow him, you might not be getting the same results. So you need to start thinking for yourselves and monitoring your health and be smart about things. And you always need to, what I like to say in my gardening channel, learn as you grow. You're going to be living and learning as you grow. You're going to have to change and modify your approach if you're not getting the results. So the results, if you're not getting the results, you just don't immediately go to the dark side. You figure out what went wrong.
Throw the baby out with the bathwater. None of it works.
And you change some things to get the results you need. And Jameith, tell us about your new book you're going to come out with. It's going to cover a lot of these issues to help everybody get healthier.
About 6 months. It's going to come out. I've got some time dedicated to finish it. I've been working on it for, over 15 years. It's going to present a whole new paradigm in healthy eating, in plant-based eating, and in raw food eating, showing why it's absolutely critical, with new definitive information, talking about some of the leukocytosis information I've done, plus other shocking things like that, why we absolutely must be plant eaters to be healthy, why raw is phenomenally good for you, and why, even though I've talked about, I don't think most people should be all raw long term.
I agree.
The thing I will also be having in there on the flip side is, if you want to be optimally healthy, you must include a high percentage of high water content raw foods in your diet, or it's just not going to happen. You've got to have enough, and that's going to vary depending on people. And it's going to create a whole new paradigm and a lot of controversy. People calling me names and swear words because I'm not all raw anymore, and I'm blah, 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 and that isn't really true about meat. But I encourage you to read. It's going to be called Raw Warrior, embracing the biology, not the philosophy.
Wow, I definitely agree with that, because to me, and I've said this many times, you can check some other videos, and raw is not the law. What it's about to me, it's about 100% health, not 100% raw. If I had to eat some cooked plant-based products to get healthier, whole foods, I definitely do it. But to this date, I haven't found the need or the desire to do that. But maybe with some of this new information coming out, I might have to change my mind a little bit.
And if I were to be all raw right now in my life, I would have to make a choice. If I'm being all raw and athletic, I'm working out weights, I'm hiking, I'm running, I'm doing things. And I don't do that all the time. I'm a weekend warrior now because I got to work and have a job and so forth. If all raw, I need to make a choice for my metabolism. I would either need to eat too much sugar because I'd be having a lot of calories coming in, or I would need to eat too much fat in the form of nuts and seeds and avocados, because I can't just do it on vegetables. I can't just do it on salad. I'm not getting enough calories coming in. See, and I've done that before all raw. I've done too much fat, I've done too much sugar, and it's bad. I thrive much better, and I have no choice at that point other than to eat whole food cooked things. It's required in that case. Now, does that make sense in the Garden of Eden? No. But is it real, a reality now for the vast majority of people? In my experience, the answer is yes. And I want you to be healthy. If you're thriving like a maniac and you're all raw and everything's perfect, don't do anything different. If you're not, do.
Absolutely agree with that. So, Jamin, how can somebody learn more about you, your work, and purchase some of your products?
They can go to healthforce.com or warriorforce.com, neither of which are directly talking about my book right now, but we'll have links to that book when it comes out. We'll have a big fanfare on that. And currently you can get what I believe are the best, most nutrient-dense, most life force-enhanced superfoods on earth at healthforce.com, or for the sports enthusiast, warriorforce.com.
Wow, Jamin, that was really powerful. I hope you use this information to change your life for the positive. There's so much information contained in this, you might want to actually even watch it a second time. So, Jamin, I really want to thank you for this time you shared to educate my viewers about this stuff so that they don't have to go to the dark side and they can stay on a healthy, whole foods, plant-based, primarily raw foods diet.
Yes, I want you to be healthy, and I want you to be happy, and I want the world to be a healthier and happy and more compassionate place, all at the same time, and we can do that.
Thank you, Jamin. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Once again, my name is John Kohler with OKRaw.com. We'll see you next time, and remember, keep eating your fresh fruits and vegetables. They're the best.